See everyone here. There are 34 people in this webinar. This is the most I've taught on Zoom, the most people I've taught on Zoom. And I just want to tell you a little bit about, I want to introduce myself, and then I'm going to tell you what the plan for today is. I teach English as a second language at the American Language Program at Columbia University. So my webinar is modeled on higher ed, but I think I'm going to present a technology or a platform that you can use wherever you are teaching. I'm going to talk about Google's Pairdeck for Google Slides. Like you, I think my experience with teaching on Zoom is very limited. I just had to pivot to it last spring, maybe like most of you. And my experience with using technology is less limited than teaching with Zoom, but it's somewhat limited. But what I think that I have, that you have, is that ability to teach. We are all teachers. So this vast experience with teaching ESL is driving anything I do or any platform that I use. And I think that's the main message for me when teaching remotely. We can teach, we just have to change the environment. So that's what we are going to be playing with today, doing things we do normally in a face-to-face classroom, but doing them remotely. So I wanted to share my screen and I want to talk a little bit about a concept that I've been exposed to when teaching on Zoom with seminars that I've attended, which is this terminology, this jargon of affordances and constraints. Instead of thinking of Zoom as good or bad, it's the idea of thinking, what can I do? What does this technology allow me to do? And a constraint, what this technology does not allow me to do. So with this idea of affordances and constraints, I found out that there was a really good affordance on Zoom, which was the fact that we can pair it up with other technologies. In other words, if I'm using Zoom, I can use Google Slides, I can use Google Docs, I can share my screen. These are all things that I can do with Zoom. When teaching reading, there are things I can't do, which are constraints. I can't give out the handouts. I can't really see when my students are done reading, especially if it's a big group. So with that in mind, and another constraint is the level of energy. We can sense the level of energy in the classroom, but we can't through a screen. So I discovered that there is this thing called Pairdeck for Google Slides, which is an interactive way of using Google Slides. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask you to join me on this Pairdeck presentation. And you are going to be interacting with me on this platform. And if you can, I would like you to join on your phones. So if you have a phone, grab your phone, and you are going to receive a code, and first you have to go to this website. I'm going to put it on the chat, which is joinpd.com. Oops, no, join PD, it's auto-correcting me, sorry about that, .com. And now I'm going to give you a code. I'm going to share my screen in a moment where you're going to see a code. Okay, so when you go to joinpd.com, it will request that you enter a code. and the code is CPRGM. And you can either do it on your computer or on your phone. 2 people have joined. 4. Alternatively, I'm going to give you a link, and I'm going to put this link on the chat.
I'm sorry, I don't see the code.
The code is, where don't you see it? On your phone or on the screen?
I'm looking at your shared screen.
I put it also in the chat. It is CPRGM, and it's right in the middle of the shared screen as well. CPRGM.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's what it was. Thank you.
Confused pears raise green muffins. Okay, so 19 people have connected. I'm going to check. I'm going to start in a moment. 20 people have connected. I think I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation on Pairdeck, and you can, I'm going to start the class. And I'm going to skip all these slides because we talked about them already. And we're going to go right into it. So as you can see, I just want to talk for 2 minutes about what Pairdeck is. And it's an interactive platform. But why to use it? To raise students' energy level, to vary the technologies we use in the classroom, and to share students' responses anonymously. How to use it is not something we are going to cover today, but it's something that you can go to. There are tutorials, and it's really easy. If you can create a Google Slide presentation, you can create a Pairdeck for Google Slide presentation. It's not difficult. If I can do it, you can do it. So because the focus of today is on reading, I want to do a sample reading lesson or parts of a lesson. When we teach reading, we have 3 main stages, which is before reading, while reading, and after reading. So for before reading, we are going to do an interactive predicting the content of the text activity. And then we are going to do some comprehension questions. And after that, we are going to do some vocabulary expansion. So we are going to read a text, or only 3 paragraphs of a text that is titled, "What We Lose When We Go from the Classroom to Zoom." That's the title of the article that was published in the New York Times last month. Based on this title, I want you to write some ideas you think you will find in the text. No need to write full sentences. For example, what we lose face-to-face interaction. So just type your responses. 2 people have already typed. So basically type your responses. We're going to be quiet for a moment. Go to your phone or to your screen and what do you think you will see in this text? We have 8, 9, 10. Okay. So thank you. 16 people have responded. So we lose, I just have to move things on my social skills, disadvantages of online teaching. We lose personal connection with students. Concentration will be harder. The ability to do things. Body language, we only see the face. Loss of motivation for some students. Human connection, the interaction, one-on-one instruction, less feeling of a community. Yes, so all this, right? So let's move on, and I'm going to get you to read the text. only the first 3 paragraphs. And what I would like you to do is, if you see anything that we have discussed, we didn't have a chance to discuss, but any of these ideas, real discussions, natural excitement for teaching, active student participation, intimacy with our students. If you see any ideas we discussed, please underline them on the text. So here's the text, the first 3 paragraphs. So here are the instructions. Read the first 3 paragraphs of the text and underline any of the ideas we discussed. So that one didn't work so well. I don't see underlines. Oh, here they are. Okay. Yeah. Small, intimate. Yeah. Conversation flows easily. Smudged together as a result of encroaching middle age. Small, intimate. Face each other. Slouch, large lecture hall. Trying to arouse. Yeah. So yes, this is, so if we were in a real classroom, we would discuss this, but now I just want to show you the affordances of the technology. So we're gonna carry on. So the other thing you can do is ask comprehension questions. And in this case, they are true, false, or they may be yes or no. So I invite you to answer. The author is a teacher. Could you click your response? Great, great, you did really well. So this is just a detailed comprehension question. The second one is the author describes 3 different types of classroom. Okay, so that we could, if we were in a real classroom, we would discuss why true or why false, right? Because that is ambiguous. But I don't want to get so much into the content now. I want to move on with the technology. And the last one, the author will focus on the differences among classes in her text. So this is more of an inference or inference prediction question. Okay, all right, so we are in a group of teachers, but in the classroom, we would have to stop and discuss each one of these questions. So another affordance of this technology is you can actually write your text. So what ideas will the author discuss next? We don't have to do this, but you could type your responses. Actually, why not do it? I'll give you 1 minute. What ideas in particular do you think the author will discuss next? All right, I'm going to interrupt you and show the responses. How Zoom allows for a more vibrant classroom than in person. How to overcome constraints, solutions, interactive classroom, how to transform classroom knowledge onto Zoom, what it's like to teach on Zoom. This is really interesting. We are not going to read the whole text, but I do invite you. I've given you the title. I'm going to give you the link. You have access to the whole text. She actually talks about inequities, inequalities on teaching remotely, because some students can afford the technology, some can't, some have a room where they can go and study, others can't, especially because she teaches in Queen's College. So anyway, so she talks about something other than practical issues. And the last thing I want to show you is another trick of the technology, is that you can drag a dot to a word. So let's say we've read this text and now we are working with the vocabulary. We're doing some kind of vocabulary expansion. So what word means the same as intolerably? Read the text quickly. I see 4 responses. So, oh, look at the dots. It's so cool. Unbearably, right? What word means the same as to sit with a drooping posture, with heads and shoulders bent forward? Yes, slouched. And last, what word means the same as to walk back and forth? Pace. Great. Okay. So this is the link to the article. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we only have a few minutes left and I want to see you and talk to you. So that was Pairdeck for Google Slides on reading. I'm sorry that not everybody could join the Pairdeck presentation, but I just want to leave it for Q&A or comments or anything else that you want to talk about. We have about 7 to 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or any comments?
So we have, we can extend as long as this takes, whether it's 3 o'clock or a little longer. So if there's other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 2:53. I thought it was 3 o'clock. No, it's 3:30. Sorry. So we do have time for the collaborative activity. Okay. So, but I want to allow. Let's talk a little bit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I want to ask you if you have any questions about Pairdeck for Google Slides, for what we have done so far.
It looks like there are a couple questions. Liz, do you want to ask your question about Google Slides?
Hi, my question was, is this Pairdeck only for Google Slides, or can it be used with other presentation software?
I think with I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. Pairdeck is definitely can be paired with Google Slides for presentations. I think it can be paired up with what is the Microsoft one?
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint, I think. But if you go to the website, mm-hmm. they will be able to tell you. Yeah. But I believe you can. I'm not 100% sure. I know that people are asking questions on the chat. I do ask that people do ask real questions.
Yeah, sure. Babi, Maria has a question about completing assignments. Maria, did you want to talk about that?
I noticed that in the Pairdeck, the names of students weren't asked. Is there any way to keep track of who's doing the assignments?
I don't know. That I don't know. But you get the number of people. I'm going to be brutally honest. I chose this technology because I think it's fun. And I think not many people had used it. It's not that I'm an expert and that I have used it extensively. I just wanted to show you some of the tricks, but I don't know about all the technical details. So Maria, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question, but I think you can, because what I was doing is an instructor-paced activity. You can also do a student-paced activity. In other words, if you teach asynchronously, you can give this presentation to the students and they can complete it and send it back to you. So I believe you can.
And I know that Laura, the Nice TESOL president, has been posting some information about near Pairdeck, and there are webinars that have been presented on Pairdeck. Laura, did you want to jump in here about this information? Maybe not.
Sorry, I was not near my my microphone. Can you hear me okay? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bobby. It was beautiful to see you, and I loved how you integrated the live tool of Zoom, you know, with interactive reading activities, just like we would, you know, in a classroom. And yeah, Pairdeck, we have had a couple of webinars on it, and we have those recorded in our Nice TESOL YouTube channel. And there's another tool called Nearpod, which is very similar. There's also, actually, Tristan did a wonderful session with Todd Wagner last week on Nearpod, and that's also recorded. But yeah, I was just trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. There is a free version. There's also a pro paid version, but when as an instructor, students are posting responses, whether those are like just the dot or open-ended answers, you can choose to preview them with their student names before you show or display to the whole class. You can actually even select just certain ones to share to the whole class. So there's a lot of controls on the instructor view before displaying out. And the other neat thing is like everything that we just experienced live, which is what they call instructor paced, you can actually do as an asynchronous module that is student paced. So you could set that up and students could go through those things, and then you could also do some elements live. So that's all I was gonna type in there. Thanks.
Okay. So maybe since we have time for a collaborative activity, Tristan, are there any more pressing questions, or anybody can raise their hand or unmute and talk?
Bobby, it's Brittany.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi. I was wondering if you can do more than 2 options. So you showed us the true false. Can you do multiple choice as well?
Yes, you can. Yes, actually, that's a good, thanks for bringing this up, because the true false, I selected some pre-made slides just because I wanted to try out their templates. But you can do multiple choice and you can create your own questions, and you can add as many choices as you want. Yes, so the answer is yes.
Thanks.
So if there are any more questions, comments? So what I would like to do is I would like to randomly put you in groups. And I would like to give you, it's 3 o'clock now. If I give you 10, 15 minutes for each group to develop, like I showed you Pairdeck for Google Slides. So in your groups, if you could do a collaborative activity to share back in the big group, where you talk about one affordance of using Zoom for reading. So in groups, one affordance for using Zoom with reading. Just like I did with Pairdeck for Google Slides, it could be as simple as we can send the link to the text on the chat and the students can read it and they create their own comprehension questions or whatever ideas. I want, in your groups, please come up with one idea that you want to share back in the big group later on. When you are in your breakout rooms, if you could create either on the whiteboard or a Google Doc to bring and to share later, that would be great. But if you just want to report orally, that would also be okay. So is it clear? So go to your groups, create one, discuss one activity that you can do to teach reading on Zoom, and then come back and share with the group. If possible, create something on the whiteboard or on a Google Doc that you can share when we come back. If you don't want to share a document, you can just report orally. Tristan, there are 31 people. How about we do 6 groups? But I cannot create the breakout rooms. Can you create them for me, please?
I'll break it up into 6 rooms. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
5 participants? Okay. I'll create the rooms now.
15 minutes.
Or I might have a reading. Hi, Tristan.
Hey, Tristan.
I might have a reading and writing class in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what brought me here. How about you, Neil? Have you used?
Yeah, so when we transitioned, I was teaching specifically a reading class.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I had to like jump to it immediately. Yeah, so, yeah, you know, I did something similar to what Bobby did, but right on Zoom. I wasn't aware of Pairdeck, but it had some of the same functions, you know, where you could annotate a text and, you know, I don't remember if there was like a poll, you know, so like, I don't know if Pairdeck is just kind of like a few extra bells and whistles that sort of make it look, you know, a little jazzier than Zoom maybe. But it was hard to tell just from that short thing how much difference there is between just trying to share the screen and let students annotate on Zoom. I don't know if you have any.
Neil, when you say annotate on Zoom, can Can you explain what you mean by
Oh, yeah. Have you not seen? So, this is somewhat from memory, but you go to the whiteboard,
Yep.
and there's an annotate tool somewhere along the ribbon on the bottom.
Okay, so you're using the whiteboard feature for the annotate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes, but no. Oh, wait. Maybe it wasn't that, because I did post something that students were reading. So I guess it was on the share screen, and you can allow participants to annotate.
Okay, on a shared
From memory, yeah. So I might be a little fuzzy on that, but I do remember them making squiggles and lines and things. So
Did you find that effective?
yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, at least it gets everyone to kind of, for a moment look and be on the same page, literally, which often is, questionable when you're in these.
I had
formats.
a similar experience, Neil, in that in a business English class I was teaching, we were going over vocabulary, and I
Right.
gave them a few minutes in a breakout room to come up with a sentence using the word, and we hadn't used the whiteboard yet, and we used the whiteboard with Annotate. And I had 11 students in the class, and one who happened to be lower in grammar than the others was faster at annotating, so she became the on-screen editor. And she
Right.
was fixing all the sentences, and we took a screenshot of it so we could actually see where the mistakes had been. It was kind of hard to make beautiful penmanship on that feature, but
Right.
um
Yeah. So I mean, you have to play around with these different ones and see like what's a little easier, better, or whatever. But yeah. So how did you when you did have a reading, let's say, and you said you sent it, or posted or something.
Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
how you doing in here?
Good.
Good. You guys got some good affordances?
We think so.
Yes, I think.
Well, can I hear one of them? I'm curious.
Basically, we said we can use this for like read alouds on the spot,
Gotcha.
whether it's a chapter book or just like a short picture book, and we could talk about theme, main ideas, vocabulary, character analysis, and that could be a quick informative assessment on the spot. So that's, and it's interactive, and you'll see who's listening, who's not listening.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good informative. I like the true false, like asking that throughout while we're reading, because it just lets me know like who's still with us or who accidentally or not accidentally, but like stepped away from the screen. So it's good.
I'm gonna pop over to another room, but thank you. If you guys, I'm just writing down a couple of you guys' names and your ideas in case you guys feel like volunteering in the bigger room.
To kind of explain colloquialisms or certain expressions that you'll hear on a television show or in day-to-day conversation that you're not going to read in a grammatical, in a workbook or in a text that's going to be teaching you English grammar. And I thought about that because that's what people are doing now. People get together, they do these virtual dates where they're watching a movie or a TV show on Zoom. So why couldn't that be different?
They watch the video and then they have to write about the video. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, typically the assignments, the episodes, I should say, they're accompanied by some sort of writing assignment. But with the advantage that you have with something like YouTube is that you can have subtitles. And it's not reading in the typical fashion, but it is reading nonetheless. You've got to have some sort of endurance.
Oh, you're talking to your son or something. Okay, so I'm sharing this? Okay, so It's Kristen, Willens, Monique, and Josai.
How you guys doing?
Okay, so let's just make a list of the things that we, I don't know, that we do. Let's see, use what
happened?
I'm trying to remember what that's called, a Kahoot. Use Kahoot
And the
for a whole class activity.
Good.
Right. Yeah. So hi Tristan. It's good to see you. So I didn't know about Jamboard, right? Was that what you used, Sterling?
Yes, it's part of the Google Suite. So one of the options with Google Docs and Google Slides, as I kept scrolling lower, I saw Jamboard, and one of my colleagues told me about it and how to use it. So I've been incorporating it in the classroom.
I am going to try today to see how I can do it, because I think it's great. I like it. Thank you.
I think it would work very well with beginner learners.
I agree.
With advanced learners.
I've seen some of my colleagues have used it for advanced learners. What they'll do, I mean, the one you guys saw, I created my own, but for advanced learners, they've dragged, let's say, a reading comprehension paragraph with the questions, like just the worksheet, the actual worksheet, they dragged into the Jamboard, and that way the students are able to, underline the word, write a sentence, circle the response, depending on how that worksheet is made. So it kind of makes that PDF that sometimes our students are not able to make editable, so they're able to write on the worksheet in the Jamboard.
Interesting. That's very good to know. You
back. Just one thing I didn't say at the beginning. For those of you who are not so familiar with Zoom, at the top right, you have speaker view or gallery view. If you do gallery view, you can see everybody, which may be nicer. So we're going to share some of the ideas that we discussed in the groups, but you can just unmute yourself and chime in. But if you want, you can also use the blue hand. The blue hand is raising your hand remotely. The way you raise your hand, you can raise your hand, that's fine. Or you can go to participants. And when you go to participants, you go to more. Oh, I don't see it here. I'm in a class where I see raise hand. Oh, where you see reactions. I don't know. Let's just raise our real hand. Tristan, do you know how to raise
under
hand?
Participants.
I know.
Participants window. You have to pop out the participant.
If you use any of the reactions, like a thumbs up, we can use that as a raise hand feature. That's totally fine.
Yeah, so if you go to reactions and you can do thumbs up, and that means you want to talk. So because I was in a group, I just want to invite the participants in my group to share the two ideas. Somebody was using Jamboard. Hi, Sterling. Can you share your screen and show us Jamboard? That was really cool.
Are you guys able to see that? Okay, so I basically I have early learners, so I use Jamboard. I'm sorry. So I use Jamboard. I create the activity though. So we're working on letter sounds, small words, and we try to pair the word with a picture. So I created this activity to reinforce learning the word be. And so basically the students, while I'm doing a live lesson, I could see which student is sliding the word to the bottom, or some students, they'll use the pencil on the side and they'll just make a line from the word to the bottom. Or if they're doing it incorrectly, I'll also see in the bubble that's usually up here. When there's more than one person, I'll see which student is answering it incorrectly. So I typically would present the activity in different ways. So this is just one way I've done it. And if we've already worked on more than one word, I would create it as a sorting activity, and they would do it this way, where they would move as a line, or they would move the picture under the word. So it reinforces the picture and the word. And for our students that have, they're still working on fine motor skills, tracing, writing, I would have the word here, and they would trace over it just to practice that way. And the students that are working on copying words or writing words will write it on the bottom. And I would see which students are doing it. I just wanted to add, after we've done it as a live lesson, I've also added it in the classroom individually, so each students will have their own copy so that they can practice individually, and I could monitor progress that way.
Thank you, thank you. And Maria, you also you had a reading activity. Sorry, does anybody have any questions? So Maria, can you share the Google Doc that you used with your students?
Yes, of course. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen with you guys. Are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, so this is something that I work with my Saturday program. It's like a learning institution. I provided my students a reading, and I gave them each a copy. I forgot to click on the option, give us copy to each student at the beginning when I was assigning the project to them. And here I just took a screenshot of the question, and then they were able to answer the essay question. Here, this is Ethan's, William's, Heidi's. I'm able to see it live time because this is Google Docs, and Google Docs is it's interactive, and you're able to see what the other person is working on, and it's similar to Microsoft Word in a sense, but there aren't as many features as Microsoft Word, which is not so great. But here, like you can actually see what they're typing and see what they're doing. So I think this way I can monitor their progress as well.
Thank you.
I know that, Bobby, I know that Carlos had his thumb up. Did you want to jump in, Carlos?
There we go. Sorry, I was trying to mute myself. No, I was saying I had an idea I wanted to share, but I forgot we're still with Bobby's group, so I didn't want to jump the line. So sorry, I forgot about that.
Go for it.
Well, I teach adult ed. It's a little bit different, and our English classes are more like conversational. So what we were talking about was maybe if you're watching instructional video, like in our case, we utilize a television show that the state is pushing, which is fine, but every now and then there'll be informal language. So we were saying if we were able to watch it as a class, if we were able to watch the show together via Zoom, that gives us the opportunities. Number one, they're actually reading the text because it's on the screen as a subtitle. But number two, it also gives the teacher opportunity to kind of stop and ask questions and explain when there's a figure of speech or colloquialism or anything like that that you would not normally encounter in your typical academic text, in a book that is explaining or breaking down grammar to you, or informal language.
So it's a way to read dialogue or read speech and to stop and intervene as a teacher, ask questions and comment. Yeah, so that's great.
What we were talking about is that like during quarantine, people they're doing virtual dates. They're watching movies together on Zoom. So why shouldn't the classroom be any different?
Great. Thank you. Thank you all.
I see in the chat that Laura their team created a Padlet with all of their ideas. If anybody from that group wanted to volunteer any other ideas that they created on Padlet, and of course it's a collaborative endeavor, so you can add your own as well to this Padlet.
One thing good about you? Only one?
Well, not one. One thing that's good about you is that there's, you know, to catch it.
If you press the button, I pressed it twice and it comes.
Oh.
Sorry. Laura, did you want to summarize any of the ideas your team came up with on that Padlet?
Well, Padlet obviously is another nice tool for that interaction. So I just made one really quick, but it would be so nice if everyone wanted to put one of their awesome reading ideas, because it's always helpful to hear other people's ideas. On here we have things, you know, we were talking about one of the constraints, which is live reading together simultaneously on Zoom, you know, and so using differentiated readings, putting people in breakout rooms, you know, thinking about how people can be active with text and you can monitor it. So obviously things like that you showed, Bobby, like with the Pairdeck, or it could be a Google Doc or a Padlet, are ways for students to interact with reading texts when you are not able to always read at the exact same pace together at the same time. And one of the ideas was also using images and kind of matching them to text, so that can kind of be another sort of drag and connect type activity. Maybe you can tell us a little more how do you deal with that challenge? For example, if we're reading something like, let's say the vocab activity, I can see other people putting dots there before you know, obviously you could control that with Pairdeck, like you wouldn't have to show it right away.
Right.
How do you manage like the pacing? Because obviously readers read at very different rates. So it's a challenge in terms of doing it live. So for example, if I'm reading aloud something and they can see the text, well, that of course is going to be instructor paced. When I finish reading, you're done. But if I give you something to read, it's really hard, you know, to
that's a really good question, because I think if you're reading a long text on a Zoom classroom, I think it's fair to give the students the text beforehand so that they come to class already prepared, just so that they can lay their eyes on the text and have it in their brains and then do the whole comprehension and the activities in class. I think when you share a screen, it has to be somewhat short. That's even with you who are teachers. I just wanted to do the first 3 paragraphs. Also, there are time constraints. So I think we have to be very careful about how much we want them to read in class. So they have the option of reading before class. You mentioned flipping the class, Laura. Can you say what you mean? But just on that thing about how do you pace, I think that you want to encourage students to read faster. I think this is a great affordance of the technology, because in class, when we used to teach in the real classroom, I used to tell my students, don't read with your eyes, don't use a pen, don't look at your phones for vocabulary, ignore the words you don't know. And on Zoom, we can actually do this. Like, you have 8 minutes to read these 4 paragraphs, and then I'm going to give you some questions. And then, so I think a time to train your students to read faster can happen. And you also posted something, I couldn't read the whole chat, about flipping the classroom, getting the students. Could you speak to everybody? So I hope I answered your question.
No, yeah, I was just reiterating what you said. I've just put it in other words. I was just saying that when you're talking about reading ahead of time, that's like flipping the class. So instead of, I'm going to go over something and then assign reading as homework that follows the class, is the flipping is before class you read it, and then you come in, you've already read it. And then we can do this different textual work with the piece. Right. Which makes a lot of sense. And I was saying, reiterating what you said about for live reading, it's going to have to be shorter, and the focus is going to be more on getting the gist, sort of the top-down approaches, and really more about the fluency piece. Or it's going to be a bottom-up approach where you're really dissecting, let's say, what an author did in a particular sentence, or a grammatical element, or obviously vocabulary. So I was just condensing what you said, definitely.
Okay, it's just
agreed. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We're almost at that time. Did anybody else have any questions or comments about the reading activities they discussed in their breakout rooms?
Please share.
Okay. Well, there is the Padlet in the chat field, which
Great, thank
great
you.
ideas. Bobby, did you want to say any final words here?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming and for collaborating and being part of the community. I think everybody's craving community everywhere, and I think these webinars allow us to exchange ideas. And I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. And I think everybody, I took a nugget, which is the Jamboard. You know, I'm definitely going to use that, and I think we all learn something from each other. So thank you very much. And please be in touch if you have any questions. I can hold hands on Google Pairdeck for Google Slides to a limit, but please be in touch if you have